Well, welcome everybody. My name is Catherine Eccles. I'm an associate professor here at the Oxford Internet Institute. To everyone online, so we are online now, the camera at the end there, and to those of you in the room, welcome to this talk, The Effect of Typicality of Lyrics on Song Popularity. We are so delighted to have my colleague, Professor Danilo Dantas, with us to discuss how, although the evolution of listening patterns resulting from the advent of streaming patterns calls for a finer and renewed understanding of the drivers of song popularity, few studies have investigated the relationship between song popularity and typicality of lyrics in relation to a given canon. Danilo is full professor of marketing at HEC Montreal, where he's in charge of the graduate diploma in management of cultural organizations, vice president of the board of Jeunesse Musicale Canada, and a member of the scientific committee of the Interdisciplinary Observatory of Creation and Research in Music and the Faculty of Music of the University of Montreal. So his research interests are in music marketing and digital marketing. We're so thrilled to have you here, Danilo. Thank you so much. The presentation is going to be about 30 to 40 minutes. There'll be a discussion at the end. If you're joining us online, please use the Q&A box and I will make sure to attend to that when it comes time for questions. And I think just for awareness, the event's being recorded and we posted on our website at the end so that you all know that. And I think with that, I'll hand over to you, Danilo. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for the invitation and for this introduction. I am very happy to be here, very excited. It's my second time here in Oxford. I was telling Catherine the first time it was sunnier, let's say, than this time, but very happy. The project I'm presenting today is an ongoing project that we are willing to submit to a journal such as Music Perception or Psychology of Music. So any ideas, suggestions, and criticisms you have will be very helpful to us. So the idea is to move forward with this project and try to make it the best we can do. I'm not doing this alone, as you can see here. I'm doing this project with a group of people, starting with Haula Shibuni. She was an MSc student that now is turning to a PhD program in machine learning. Florian and Adrian, they are PhD students at HEC Montreal. Adrian is a student in marketing, and Florian is a student in BI decision sciences. And then myself and my dear colleague, Gilles Capozzi, professor of decision sciences. So we all know what has happened in the music industry over the last years. And what interests us here today is the impact of streaming platforms on the consumption of music and the relationship between consumers and the musical product and how it impacts our preferences, right? The fact that we have more availability instead of a physical media to interact with music, it has shaped the way we interact and the way we appreciate music. So there's a renewed interest in the structure of musical preferences. But does typicality matter? Does a cultural product that is typical is more successful than a cultural product that is not typical? So here we have two competing hypotheses. The first one is the familiarity hypothesis, meaning that a product that is familiar or typical represents less risk to the consumer. We don't see it as a threat, right? Sometimes we're kind of scared of new things. But there's also the uniqueness hypothesis, and I come from marketing, I'm sorry, but if you do not bring differentiation to the table, you are not creating value. So if here we say the more typicality brings more success and popularity, here we're saying less typicality brings more success. So where are we when we talk about typicality in the musical world? But what is typicality? Okay. Can we say that this building is a typical university building? Yes or no, and why?
Depends on the context.
Okay, what is the context?
Like in the UK, probably yes, but in China, probably no.
Yeah, and in Canada, no.
Yeah.
It really depends on to what you are comparing your item. So typicality is a measure of comparison. Does it represent a group that I chose to analyze? Right? So when we think about music, especially lyrics, what could be a typical song? A song that uses the same words? What else?
Same structure.
Same structure, chorus, verses, verses and chorus. Yeah. What else? What is it? Length? Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Common musical melodies.
Yeah, but if we talk about lyrics,
Okay,
what could be a typical lyric?
Typical subject matters.
Yes, the themes, exactly. We're talking about love. If I'm a country singer, I will sing about cattle, love, and trucks, right? And I'd be a typical country singer. Okay, is Little Nas X a typical country singer? See, no. Right? So there are different ways to see typicality in the musical world. There are some research on this topic, some natural language processing articles on lyric typicality and popularity of songs. However, no articles without black boxes or dictionaries. And it brings a problem of replication and adaptation to language evolutions. If we are using dictionaries to analyze lyrics, it means that we depend on the quality and availability of the dictionaries to have our results. So it gives less freedom to the researchers to replicate this type of work. And in our case, it is, in our point of view, it is a problem. So obviously, our objective is to replicate and to extend existing studies on the impact of lyrics typicality on song popularity and propose a new and replicable methodology. When we talk about typicality in general in the arts world, not only music, previous research shows that there's an impact of typicality on the aesthetic response of consumers. But we're not sure what is this effect and what is the impact. Regarding lyrics typicality, what we know is that there are two main studies that were done to explore the typicality. The first one was from Berger and Packard. Berger is at Wharton. And they show that the less typical the lyrics, the more popular the song is. How did they do that? They analyzed themes, as you said. So they used a dictionary-based technique to analyze the themes, and they correlated it to the Hot 100, the Billboard Hot 100 rank. So there's a correlation, an impact of typicality on the highest rank a song could get. Meaning that less typical, when you talk about different subjects in comparison to a canon, you are more successful. 2 years later, Adrian North, Amanda Krause, and I think it's Daniel, his first name, Ritchie, they published a study at Psychology of Music showing that typicality has a positive impact on the number of weeks a song stays at the top 5 position ranking in the UK. So it's not exactly the same thing, but it's the opposite way. More typicality leads to more success. It's not the highest rank position. They tested it and it was non-significant, but is on the duration, the tenure of the song, in the chart. To do that, they chose a sample of songs from, I have the name later, from one of the top, I think it's UK top 100 songs. Does it make sense? Yeah. And they analyzed only the top 5 positions. And while it's not a typical dictionary-based analysis, they kind of utilized dictionaries to, it's the same as Berger, but with more granularity. Berger and Packard were at the theme level, very big themes. And here we have a more granular view of the lyrics using dictionaries. So these 2 researchers employ dictionary-based analysis. As I said before, dictionaries do not consider slang words or voluntary deformations of words by artists. So you're missing a part of the phenomenon here if you're using dictionaries. Dictionaries usually, not all of them, of course, are non-accessible resources, which therefore limits the replicability of the studies. And then the analysis is made at the theme level, not the word level. And I think this nuance is very important. So, as a natural consequence of what I just showed you, the expected contribution of this research is to be the first study to focus on the individual effect of lyrics typicality on a song's popularity. Why am I saying that? Because the paper by North and colleagues, they use lyrics typicality and music typicality to explain the success of a song. So they are testing both factors at the same time. And it's difficult to see what is the individual impact of lyrics typicality on the success of songs. Our second expected contribution is to propose a new dictionary-free method to measure the typicality of songs at the word level by using NLP techniques. So we try to replicate to the best of our capacities the study by North and colleagues. So we selected the same sample of songs, or almost the same one, because we ended up with 1,457 songs while they were using 1,414. We do not have a list of songs that they used, so we could not compare the 2 lists. The difference, we think, comes from the fact that they had to eliminate a couple of songs that were using 2 languages, English and Spanish, English and French. So their dictionary could not handle this lyrics, right? So we have a little bit more songs, but with a different approach. Not the same technique to analyze the data. So how have we defined typicality? Typicality is the distance to a prototypical instance, a distance to a prototype. To generate such a prototype, and here's one of the differences we are showing in comparison to previous work, we use NLP techniques to extract multi-dimensional features from the lyrics. So we're not using one feature of typicality, but 9 different measures of typicality. So it provides us with like a broader view of what typicality is and what is the impact of this variable. For each of them, we define the corpus average as the most typical member of the category. So we are dealing here with averages. We are comparing the song feature to the average of the group that we selected to each one of the variables. Is it clear? So far, so good? Yeah, cool. You can interrupt me if you want, okay? If you have questions. Yes?
We have detailed multidimensional features of this prototype. What not?
I will present you all the variables. And in the paper, everything is explained. And we're going to put all the code online available to everybody.
Great. Perfect.
So, did I jump? Yeah. Okay, good. To measure popularity based on the work of North and all, we took maximum rank and number of weeks. The popularity, the success of songs. And then based on other works, we chose kurtosis. Kurtosis is to what extent your distribution is pointy and flat, right? And just for the sake of doing this, we also added skewness that could provide an idea of trajectory, right? Because a song could enter from the top in a ranking or from the bottom and then fall very, very fast or slowly and leaves the ranking.
So those are the skewness and kurtosis of the rank data of the song
Yeah.
over time?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, the position. So week 1, you were number 3. Week 2, you were number 2. Week 3, we were number 1, and so on and so forth.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the distribution for which we calculated skewness and kurtosis. And we chose 4 dimensions to measure typicality. These are not variables, these are dimensions. Lexical repetition, complexity, topics, and emotions. Here they are. Lexical repetition. The first variable was chorus repetition. How many times the chorus was repeated? There is some research that shows that the more you repeat words in a song, the more popular it is. By the way, you know, I'm blue, da-ba-dee-da-ba-da. This is a song where you have a lot of repetition. It might explain the success of this song. Then, I'm not the NLP guy, okay? I'm the marketing guy. I'll try to explain this to the best of my knowledge, and I can provide more details if you want after the presentation when I check the article. So, but I think you will understand what we've done here. Then we calculated the age point, which is a measure of vocabulary richness. It's more or less like that. I'm writing a song and I want to convey the idea of contradiction. I could use the word however, or I could use the word nevertheless. However is a more popular, common word than nevertheless, at least in North America, right? So if a song is using however, it is more typical. If a song is using nevertheless, it's less typical, okay? There's a whole calculation behind this. It's not very simple. It's like where 2 lines, they cross, so we have the age point, something like that. It's very cool, but I could not do it myself. For the complexity dimension, we also had 2 variables. Diversity, number of different words in the lyric divided by the total number of words in the song. Then complexity, average number of characters per word. Longer words are less typical than shorter words. Topics, our 3rd dimension. Using LDA, we came up with 4 topics that were present in our sample. So we calculated 2 variables. The first one was the KL divergence. And I'll read that, not to make mistakes. The extent to which the distribution of topics addressed in a song differs from the distribution of topics addressed on average in the corpus. Right? And then distance to the main topic, the extent to which the song evolves around the main theme. Does it talk about one thing or many things? And it doesn't mean that talking about one thing is more typical than talking about many things. Remember, it's the distance, it's the difference towards the group we are comparing the song, okay? And then emotions. Valence and arousal. Okay, so you're not using a dictionary here, Danilo? Yes and no. We have used an open dictionary. I think it's Moody Lyrics, if I'm not mistaken, to train a model using our own data set. And it's kind of, we used dictionaries in the beginning of the process, but then we abandoned it once we had a model. So I'm not sure if I can explain that correctly, but that's what we've done. Both are the absolute value between each song's output probability for the target variable, valence or arousal, and the corpus mean probability for that same variable. So for each of these 8 variables, we had 4 dimensions, 2 variables per dimension. Typicality is the absolute value of the difference between each song score and the corpus mean score for that variable.
Quick question
Yeah.
regarding the emotion. First one is the emotion to each song has an emotion, or is like in the song there are every sentence will have a emotion. The second question is you mentioned train a model, which means you probably need some annotated data.
Yeah.
And who did that? Is that
It was ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole team was doing this.
okay?
Yeah, we haven't hired any external help to do that.
Yeah, I was just thinking maybe you use some already trained models or something, or you just have labeled by your stuff.
Yeah, this is where I think Moody Lyrics come in. Yeah, I'm sorry I cannot provide you all the details, the technical details, but we have that, and I have that with me. I can show that. Okay. And the emotion is for the song, not for the phrase. Okay. It's song level. So, okay, so for each one of the variables, we're dealing with the absolute difference. Okay. And then we calculated a general typicality score, which is the sum of all the variables I just showed you. So here they are, the 9 variables that we used to measure typicality. The general typicality score, the complexity dimension with diversity and complexity, emotion dimension with valence and arousal, the lexical repetition, the age point, how weird the word is, and chorus repetition, and topics, distance to the main topic, and KL divergence. And we run 36 different general linear mixed models to arrive to our results. Why we did that? We started with our general typicality variable. And then we said, okay, but what is the contribution of each one of the typicality variables to the success of the song? So since these variables are highly correlated among them, we cannot put them together in the same model. So we run individual models for each one of them, right? So we had one independent variable and one dependent variable. 9 independent variables times 4 dependent variables, 36 models, okay? We had a lot of fun. And something that is also different from previous research is that we had the label data. So we could control for label. It was one control variable that we included in the data. Why? Because some labels put more money into the career of some artists and less money for the artists. So the results, I'm going to show just, sorry.
I am referring to the results. Just a question about the song selection.
Yeah.
Was that selected for songs released within a certain window, songs that made it into the charts? What's kind of the inclusion criteria?
The real criteria was to replicate North and colleagues.
So it's the UK top hits. songs.
Exactly the same thing they used. Yeah,
Okay.
if the song was in the chart between January 1999 and December 2013, if I'm not mistaken,
Sure.
the song was in.
Okay.
Yes.
Why do you control the genre or year?
For genre,
And year.
oh yeah. Good question. There might be a difference in terms of typicality for genres. Yes, we haven't done that. There, we could have
Maybe
done.
Artist and genre are very correlated, so you could capture some of that with artist. But yeah, I don't know what you.
Sometimes if you one artist and you get published in one genre and the genre changes. I don't know, it just feels like something I would want to include.
This is something we might test. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think in the absence of that, you have typicality according to an endogenously defined series of quasi-genres. Because they're only quasi-genres because they're LDA results. And then you look at the results and go, most of those songs are country, it's the country genre.
Yeah.
Most of those are those, which is and endogenously defined, maybe different from exogenously defined genres, which would be pre-specified, say, this is on the country charts or the UK hot dance charts for which dance or country would be the genre. This might complicate how we define typicality if it's typicality according to a thing that is already within the study.
Yeah, you're kind of forcing the results to be in one way. Yeah, but I would say that these songs are highly skewed to pop.
Of course.
So I'm not sure. I would have to check the data that if we eliminate anything that is not pop in this, we would have still have a big sample of songs. So, but this is definitely something we could check, and something that we could do with a different sample too, since this is replicable. Thank you. Thank you. Results? Okay. Out of 4 variables, dependent variables we had significant results for 2 of them. Okay. First one is max rank. The only variable that was statistically significant or marginally significant is the age point, which is vocabulary richness. Okay. This is the beta, and this is the p-value. Okay. And the other variable that had statistically significant results was the number of weeks in the top 5 position, the tenure of the song in the chart. So we had the typicality score, the general typicality score that was statistically significant, the diversity, the number of different words divided by the total number of words in the song, and again, the age point. But there is something very interesting here. See, we have a positive beta here, meaning that less typicality leads to more success. While here, I have more typicality leads to more weeks at the top 5. So going back, max rank, meaning that the top position or the highest position that you got in the ranking is impacted by the age point or the richness of the vocabulary, where a less typical, more rich vocabulary leads to a higher position in the ranking. Whereas here, a less rich vocabulary leads to a longer time in the charts.
Just can you explain more about the contextual information about how the ranking works? I'm not completely sure how it works. So did that expert decide who rank the top at the first
No.
beginning, then
Number of sales.
number of sales.
Yeah.
It's always the number of sales.
Well, it has evolved because with the streaming platforms, it's how often a song is played or purchased, right? So different rankings have different techniques, but it is a measure of popularity,
Yeah.
and it's not controlled, should not be controlled by no one. There isn't a way to buy my place at the top 5 whatever. See, so if you take the Hot 100 by Billboard, they take into consideration the number of sales, number of streams, number of YouTube views. And some rankings, they also take into consideration radio plays.
And they do this weekly, then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Usually it's weekly.
So in the original paper, that was every 3 months over a 3-year period from 2014 to 2016. So I assume that would be comparable in your data as well.
Yeah.
And I guess we would also assume that over the period of 2014 to 2016, there wouldn't be a radical change, like all of a sudden they, like in 2015, they started including Spotify or something, which would kind of like make a big difference, I suppose.
I think the changes were made before this this period, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
It would seem to be the case from their paper.
Yeah.
They mentioned they've already included Apple iTunes and Google Play metrics within the rankings prior to 2014.
Yeah, but what would be the concern? I'm curious to know.
Yeah, I just wanna, because basically we are studying the duration problem and the popularity problem.
Mhm.
So I'm just wondering whether the comparison is on the same level and the variable is controlled. So if the ranking system is the same, I guess, yeah, we can compare.
Yeah, the ranking system is the same. Yeah, we're using basically the same songs that North and colleagues were using with slight difference.
Yeah.
But we cannot check what were the songs because the list is not public. Okay, and here we have, this is a negative beta just because the way the variables were calculated, but it shows that more typicality leads to more success, right? And here also. Okay, so next steps. We want, once the replication is done.
Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
confused. Maybe like you can help me. So these metrics are computed as differences, absolute differences to the mean, which means that actually the values could be in either direction, but
Yeah,
just as compared to the mean.
Exactly.
So how do you interpret the coefficients?
You would need to go to each one of them. I don't have this interpretation for each one of them.
Or just like one example of like the, I don't know, the typicality score, for example.
This is very difficult because this is the sum of all of them. But what it indicates that the more a song is typical, according to these different dimensions, the more or the longer it will stay in the charts. This is how I interpret data.
Okay. What I'm struggling with is the centering with the mean
Mm-hmm.
in terms of interpretation, especially with the typicality score, because typicality score will be like the sum of all those absolute differences, right?
Yeah.
So in a way, a positive or a negative coefficient.
I understand that there wouldn't be a negative, that the typicality would be defined like for an LDA or something like that. You'd get like a centroid. And so someone could, or the song could either be like totally on the centroid or some distance from it. And the direction of the distance is not really relevant. Like I could be not typical in one way and you could be not typical in a different way, but we would both be far away from that fictitious centroid point, and each song would be given a distance point.
Yeah, perfect.
So
So, yeah,
that
that's
wouldn't be a
reasonable. So
negative.
the domain is always positive for
Yeah.
all these explanatory variables.
You should, I mean, for typicality, something like that would usually be the case. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it has to be for all of them. Okay, thank you.
I can send you the draft of the paper if you want, where we explain in more details how the calculation was done. If you'd like to.
Yeah, this is fascinating. Thank you.
Cool. So what you're going to do next is to test the same model with a more recent canon, maybe to take into consideration the evolution of the consumption habits and the highest influence of streaming platforms and coming from different regions, just to see if we have the same exactly results. And expand the data set, not only to look at the top 5 positions, but other positions in the ranking. And that's pretty much it. Thank you very much. Your comments, your questions? Yes.
Why don't you do raw sales? Why do you use rank?
Because we wanted to replicate the work of North and colleagues. This is the main reason, but we could do that to sales, definitely. But we need to know that sales is kind of embedded in the ranking system. So we kind of capture in an indirect way the sales already, but definitely this is something that could be done.
I mean, like 1 week in January versus 1 week in August be completely different in the
Oh,
number
yeah.
of sales. And so even if you have why
Yeah.
why that song's staying in the top 5 could be completely different to why if you're
That's for sure.
you're just based on rank and use that extra dimension to the data.
That's for sure.
You
We could
control
also.
functionality, going back to controls, you could add like a month control to
Mhm.
capture that.
Because I mean, like Christmas screws
Yeah.
everything up,
Yeah.
right?
If you're Mariah Carey, for example, Christmas is pretty important to you.
And Buble, he always does well at Christmas.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
There's a great question
Oh.
from one of our online viewers. So given the existence of studies analyzing the popularity of songs, is there any level of success in predicting hit songs based on typicality? This is the great promise of data science and culture, right? It's going to be able to predict bestsellers and hit film scripts. And
If someone is promising to do that, this person is lying. Because there are so many factors that will impact the likelihood of success of a song. And if there was a formula, the big companies, they would be already applying this formula.
Yeah.
They have the resources and they have the data to do so. Okay. But what we know is that there are already some hints on what makes a success. If you are already famous and you're releasing a new album, the likelihood that this album will be, streamed a lot and will be part of the rankings is very high. Will it last? We don't know. So these are different questions. One is, will it be present in the rankings? If you are Adele and you're releasing a new album, probably yes. But will it last? Will it become a classic? This is a different question.
Yeah.
So the way you define success is very important when you try to explore this type of question.
I have
Yeah.
a question about, because I think you were mentioning that the original study was trying to kind of use both lyric kind of novelty and also musical novelty.
Typicality.
Yeah, typicality as indices, whereas this is trying to isolate lyric typicality. But I feel like if an artist sort of tends towards a particularly high threshold of typicality for it, or low threshold of typicality for lyrics, that they might naturally also tend to favor novelty in other aspects of music, like melodic structure and other stuff of music. So how do you know that what you're measuring is actually the impact of lyric per se, and not that untypical lyrics are actually a reflection of untypical song structures or something.
Okay, so you're saying that in our model, we do not take into account other factors,
Yeah,
like
the fact
musical
that-
factors,
yeah,
for example.
that lyric kind of novelty might correlate with other kinds of novelty within
Yeah.
music.
Yeah, and there are some studies that discuss this question that lyrics and melody, they go together. So some people compose the lyrics first and then they compose the melody or otherwise. Yeah, but there are some suggestions in the literature saying that this is not always the case. That there might be some kind of independence between these two factors.
So like songs can have a very unique lyrics, but still have quite a typical melody, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you could have very typical lyrics with very not typical melody, and vice versa.
This is always such interesting work.
Thank you.
These are like lightning in a bottle, and how do we, sort of measure that? Your work here focusing on typicality was meant to kind of advocate for a non-lexical approach. So these dictionary approaches, they're trouble, the words can be different things.
Yeah.
In a lot of NLP, my understanding is that an alternative to a lexical-based approach is often an embedding-based approach. Now, embeddings are slightly different than like topics in LDA. So I'm wondering about whether there is a direction towards embedding-based approaches, and if so, what models will be appropriate? Like, do you ask ChatGPT for embeddings? Do you get them from BERT? Do you get them from another model? I'm not sure you have enough sample power to train your own with just 1,000 lyrics, and there's tons of lyrics out there. So how might one, well, embeddings also create baselines. So how might one consider that in relation to your work?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on this type of subject. I don't know if I could provide an intelligent answer to that. But the view we have for this research project is that there isn't an absolute answer to the question, should I be a typical composer or not? Because it might depend on as we said before, the genre. Okay, if you were in the niche market, could be a very positive thing not to be typical. Whereas in the pop world, it's a very good thing to be typical, right? If you're dealing with neoclassical music, for example, right? I'm not talking about composers that are already dead, but new composers that are still active. You might want to be more typical because people will use this type of song to some utilitarian objective, like to concentrate while working or doing whatever at home. So there are a number of factors that will impact on the effect of typicality and success of a song. So we're trying to be as creative as we can in terms of methods to try to capture this phenomenon. So any suggestions you might have that could help us to improve the quality of the work or the scope of the work are more than welcome.
Embeddings would be the first place I go. More of you should feel free to ask later.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to try and clarify what you see as the motivation for this line of research, yours, but also the literature that you've consumed in this, because is it kind of discovering like an early stage statistical associations kind of discovery, or are you looking for something more causal and predictive? Because I'm a bit, I guess you explained that to start with, you're replicating the North paper, but I'm confused by the decision maybe of theirs to just focus on lyrical. Oh no, sorry, you said they looked at both.
Yeah,
okay,
they looked at both.
Okay. So what influenced your decision to just focus on one?
It was, let's do one thing at a time.
Okay.
First, let's explore lyrics, and then we'll move forward to have more complete models.
Okay, but and then the more complete model, would that be something predictive? That
Yeah, it's not only correlations or regressions, but yeah, it's something predictive.
I just have kind of one more question about
Yeah.
With your study and also maybe with the kind of earlier studies, is the kind of operating assumption that the correlation will be linear, or is it maybe the case that like a bit of kind of uniqueness is good, but if it's too avant-garde, then people sort of, because I feel like that's something that people mention in the literature a lot about, you want to be a bit unique, but not too bold.
Not too much.
Yeah. So it might be like sort of you.
We haven't explored that, but yeah, that's a very good possibility. Yeah. Because the focus here, going back to what you said, our first motivation and main one was to replicate, to try to replicate using another method that is open and transparent.
I'm trying to be fair to the people online, and there's a great follow-up question from the previous questioner saying, since we do have some working models that explain the popularity of songs, is it possible to write potentially popular songs using generative AI, or at least their lyrics? I noticed we have great successes of generative AI in text and visuals, but seemingly not a big breakthrough in acoustics.
This is a great question. I'd say yes, especially for genres where lyrics matter less. There are some studies that measure that, the impact of the lyrics in the liking of songs. And for these genres, I think, yeah, probably yes. But then I'm a marketer, okay? You could do that. But at some point, what matters to consumers is the relationship you have with the artist and the perception that the artist is authentic. Right? If it's just a computer generating the perfect lyrics and the perfect melody, come on. Right? Is it because it's an emotional experience, music, most of the time. So I'd say, yes, you can generate very good lyrics and very good melody, but does it matter?
Or will it touch people?
Yeah.
Do you have another question?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to add maybe a concept of complexity budget that a songwriter might have, where maybe they use it up on the lyrical side and then the melody simpler versus simple lyrics and more
interesting. Yeah.
Melody. So I think just looking at one on its own, you could kind of come away with the wrong correlation.
Yeah.
Especially if you're conditioning on a song being successful.
Yeah, and there's this is a very complex phenomenon. I don't know if you know this rock group called Tool. Do you?
Very, very tedious lyrics and very sophisticated drum patterns.
Exactly. So in one of the songs, they use the Fibonacci sequence to count time. So it changes the time signature of the song. And the songs are extremely long. And their last album was a huge success. Because they have a fan base that is very loyal. If BTS releases a song saying, I peed on my pants, it will probably be a #1 hit on Spotify because of the BTS army. So it's very complex. It's not an objective phenomenon that we're dealing with.
There's another question online.
No, we're
I
good.
just wanted to follow up on BTS there. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to be gentle here, but you asserted the legitimacy of this vis-a-vis the authenticity of music, and then articulated how BTS could do anything and hit the top. And I would not consider BTS to be very authentic. And we do know that boy bands are. I mean, if anything, this is like, does Max Martin have a data science group?
Oh, yeah.
Not, how can we connect more with users?
Yeah, but if you see what the fans of BTS say, for them, BTS is the creme de la creme in terms of authenticity, because
Okay, go on.
the storytelling, and it's amazing. I have one student
okay.
working
Go
on
for
it, and they say that they write their music, they dance, they perform, they sing well. Of course, it's a formula that we've seen before, but for these people, they are authentic. And this is something that we in marketing, we're very used to see. What I always say in my one-on-one marketing class is, you give me one example of product that is for everyone, we end the class now and I give A's to everybody. There isn't a product that is for everybody. Toilet paper, no. 2 layers, 3 layers, with smell, without smell and stuff. Water, bottled water, big, small, sparkling, still water. When you bring a category of products to the level of a product, there isn't a product that is to everyone. And music is the same thing. So for these people, I mean, the fans of BTS is the best thing on earth, regardless of what other people think about them. See? So
I mean, I'm not sure. I don't necessarily want to debate this. right
yeah,
now.
no, but understand your point. I'm not a fan of BTS. I'm just very amazed by this phenomenon and how this huge group of people is totally in love with these musicians, these artists, if you don't want to call them musicians.
How would you define their typicality score relative to a baseline?
Oh.
And would that be against, like, I don't know, I didn't even know the names of these bands. Blackpink, Big Bang back in the day were big.
Yeah.
Would that be the datum upon which we'd say BTS are more or less typical? Like, for example, some boy bands came out in the onrush of Backstreet Boys that were very basic, and they're kind of forgotten. And a handful of them, like NSYNC, ended up being quite massive.
Yeah.
One Direction more recently, I think, within that formula. And so I would wonder, what's the baseline for measuring typicality, such that I can't even remember the names of the old ones now, but
Yeah.
Boy Band 6, or S Club 7. If you were to listen to their song and establish their typicality, would you want to do it against all the pop songs, the other boy bands?
Very good point. Very good point. To start, I would use all the K-pop groups. That would be the best, I think, thing to be done, is to start with. And then now they are starting to sing in English. So I would now use, for these English songs, I would compare with a more, Occidental canon, but still pop music. That's what I would do.
So many gears to turn.
Hearing is good. Yeah.
Can I maybe suggest that there might be a timing element to the idea of authenticity? So when we say, when we talk about the typicality of lyrics and then how it's popular, or like what we demand of artists, intuitively, I feel like the first time we hear an artist, we don't demand that relationship or that authenticity.
No.
That comes
Yeah.
in much later. And I think that might play a factor into how we understand the effect of typicality on the success rates. Because in some sense, I think some artists have sort of carte blanche to act or to produce different songs differently much later on. But a lot of them would try to keep it safe at the beginning to say, like, okay, this is the formula. When you're successful, we can experiment around. But get that first album out first. Yeah. And so just as a spitballing, it might be interesting to see how that changes. So even if we're talking about like boy bands and how things change, right? Maybe we started off being similar to that boy band formula. And then if we use One Direction, they started out a certain way. And then once they branched out, they had their fan base, right? And they all went their solo careers. They sound very different and they do very different things right now. So it might be a case of like getting more bargaining power in terms of like what we do and how unique we want to be, which is what was mentioned earlier on, right?
Yeah, it's a very good suggestion. Just to comment on that, having a loyal fan base, it's a double-edged sword. Because even though you have these people backing you up, so when you have a new release, they're going to listen to it and then talk about it. What we've seen in previous research is that when you have a very engaged fan base, they kind of expect that you release music that looks like what you've done before. So if you as an artist feel like changing, you might risk, losing a couple of loyal fans because you are not yourself anymore.
I think we talked about this morning about being
Yeah.
sellouts.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. But you could do something very different. It could go from pop to something different. I remember Lionel Richie that released like a country album. It was just a side project, but he did that, and he didn't need to do that for, commercial reasons.
Would he do it now? I wonder if he sort of trailed that on his social media and got a sort of tumbleweed reaction, or people really hated it. I mean, this is also something we were talking about earlier today.
Talk about the canceling.
And the way in which the audience and potentially also to some extent the algorithm can dictate the artist's decision making. That I think is a really exciting future direction for inquiry.
It is indeed.
I think we're out of time, sadly, but thank you so much for all your questions, and thanks hugely to Danilo for that amazing talk. It was so fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you very much.